tonight, while you are, deep in REM sleep, there is this highly efficient neurological mechanism at work. Think of it as a relentless night librarian.
Right. I love that analogy.
Yeah, it's just going to be sifting through every single memory you formed today, and this librarian will evaluate all those memories based on emotion and utility, and then ruthlessly delete the useless data and permanently archive the important stuff.
Exactly. It's a completely automated process.
And today we are going to show you exactly how to hack that specific biological process to master conversational English.
Which is, honestly, it's a profound shift in perspective. Because we usually treat language acquisition like it's, I don't know, an endurance
Oh,
sport.
totally. You just have to suffer through it.
Right. We assume it requires thousands of hours of conscious, agonizing manual labor. Staring at flashcards, memorizing conjugation tables, and basically just fighting against your own cognitive fatigue.
But the research we're exploring today flips that entirely on its head. So, welcome to today's deep dive. We are on a mission to uncover the most effective, scientifically backed, and frankly, slightly unconventional methods for hardwiring English into your brain.
Yeah, and the ultimate promise here for you, the listener, is that fluency does not require a plane ticket to London or New York.
Nope, not at all.
You can construct a seamless immersion environment entirely from your own home.
To do that, we are synthesizing some truly incredible material today. We're looking at a comprehensive methodology for DIY at-home immersion from a platform called Ablino, and we're pairing that with some really active solo-speaking frameworks developed by the 3D Academy.
Which are fascinating on their own. But we're also pulling from a study published in Cerebral Cortex, which was reported by Neuroscience News. And this measures how specific auditory frequencies literally alter your brain's ability to process grammar.
Right, which sounds like sci-fi, but it's real. And to top it all off, we've got transcripts from several language learning YouTube channels, including a really interesting breakdown of the heavily debated concept of sleep learning from the Confident Speaking podcast.
Yeah, the overarching theme across all these sources is really about hijacking your daily environment, your alone time, and your brainwaves to make fluency an automatic reflex rather than, a conscious effort.
Okay, let's unpack this, because that journey really begins by dismantling the physical and digital world you already inhabit.
Exactly. The Ablino Guide introduces this concept of DIY immersion, and it operates on the premise that you have to meet your brain where it already spends its time.
Right, and their very first tactical step is so seemingly minor that it's honestly easy to dismiss. They suggest taking just 10 minutes to switch the operating systems of every device you own to English.
Everything. Your smartphone, your laptop browser, your voice assistants.
Yeah, entirely to English. Now, on the surface, that sounds like a gimmick, but when you think about the mechanism, you are looking at your phone 100 times a day.
Easily 100 times.
If you change the system language, that device basically becomes a Trojan horse. You stop engaging with English as this, academic subject, and you start engaging with it as a procedural necessity.
And that procedural aspect is the crucial differentiator here. Because when you study a list of vocabulary words, you are relying on declarative memory. You are actively trying to recall facts.
Which takes effort.
A lot of effort. But when your phone battery drops to 10% and you see a pop-up that says, low battery, turn on low power mode, you aren't studying that sentence. You're reacting to it.
You just want to save your battery before your phone dies.
Precisely. You completely bypass the cognitive filter that views English as a chore. Through sheer repetition, phrases like swipe to unlock or invalid password become woven into your procedural memory.
Sort of like driving a car or riding a bike.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Your brain just absorbs the vocabulary because it has a real-world utility attached to it.
That makes so much sense. But a digital environment is really only half the battle. We also have physical spaces. And, the classic high school language class trick is to grab a stack of sticky notes and just label your whole house.
Right, the old sticky note method.
Yeah. You slap a note that says door on your bedroom door or mirror on your bathroom mirror.
Which, as it turns out, is a remarkably inefficient way to learn.
Really? Why is that?
Well, the Ablino materials highlight a major flaw with it, which is sensory adaptation. The human brain is evolutionarily wired to ignore static stimuli in its environment.
So it just tunes it out.
Exactly. By day 3, your brain stops seeing that neon pink sticky note entirely. It just blends into the background radiation of your house.
That's basically useless after a couple of days.
Pretty much. But to counter that, Ablino suggests labeling with action. Instead of a stagnant noun, you use a microphrase.
Oh, I see. So the sticky note on your door doesn't just say door.
Right. It says, close the door quietly. Or the note on your coffee machine says, brew a strong cup.
That is such a smart tweak, because if you notice the shift in cognitive demand there, you are no longer just identifying an object. You are encountering a verb, an adjective or adverb, and the underlying syntax that holds them all together.
You're forcing the brain to parse a functional thought. And if you, say, rotate those labels every Sunday, you prevent that sensory adaptation from setting in.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of behavioral science, we're really talking about the psychology of microhabits.
Absolutely. Because relying on sheer willpower to sit down and study for an hour a day is a statistical losing game. Motivation is a finite resource.
It really is. It fades so fast.
But systems, especially those anchored to existing behaviors, they endure.
Right. It's like the James Clear or BJ Fogg models of habit stacking. You don't create a new block of time in your day. You just attach a 5-minute English role play to the act of brewing your morning coffee.
The coffee is the trigger.
Exactly. And by doing that, you remove decision fatigue. The choice to practice has already been made by the system.
But this brings us to a massive glaring roadblock in the DIY immersion strategy.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. You have an English smartphone, your house is covered in action-oriented sticky notes, your coffee is brewing, but you are standing in your kitchen completely alone.
Right, passive input is great, but fluency requires output.
Exactly. How are you supposed to practice conversational reflexes in a completely empty room?
This is where we transition from reshaping the environment to hacking your solo behavior. The 3D Academy source tackles this exact bottleneck with a technique called shadowing.
Okay, yes. I've seen shadowing mentioned in high-level polyglot circles before, but the 3D Academy framework really breaks it down mechanically.
We do.
You take a very short audio clip of a native speaker, maybe just 15 to 30 seconds. You listen, and then you immediately repeat the audio out loud. And you try to mirror the exact cadence, the stress on the syllables, and the intonation.
It is essentially a neuromuscular workout.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, you are training the physical articulators in your mouth and throat to adopt the musicality of English. Reading silently does not build those fast-twitch muscle memories required for spontaneous speech.
Right, you have to actually move your mouth. And the source material you use for shadowing matters a lot, which brings up this incredibly bizarre yet weirdly effective transcript we pulled from a YouTube channel called Zen English.
Oh, this transcript, yes.
Yeah, they created this 3-hour-long simulated dialogue between two fictional neighbors named Steve and Lisa.
It is a marathon of uninterrupted, completely mundane small talk.
It is deeply mundane, but also wildly chaotic. So Steve is the new neighbor, and the transcript reveals he actually used an AI chatbot to generate an icebreaker to use on Lisa.
Which is already a terrible idea.
Such a bad idea. So he walks up to her and opens with, "You're the first Lisa I've met who picked the name for you."
Which is a completely nonsensical statement. It leaves Lisa utterly baffled.
She actually calls it the weirdest question she's ever been asked. But then the funny part is they just roll with it. The conversation meanders for hours.
Hours of just random Thomas.
Yeah. They discuss Steve's broken down car. Then he attempts to explain the philosophy of jujitsu to her. And then they suddenly bond over a shared, intense obsession with classic hip-hop, specifically Eminem and the rap group D12.
It is a jarring conversational pivot, to say the least.
It really is. But here is where I have to aggressively push back on the 3D Academy's recommendation to use these kinds of dialogues for solo roleplay.
Okay, why is that?
Because language is fundamentally a social mechanism, right? It exists to transmit information between two minds. If I'm standing alone in my kitchen, acting out both sides of a conversation about Eminem with an imaginary neighbor, it's not just going to feel ridiculous. It feels entirely decoupled from reality.
I get what you're saying.
Like, doesn't the brain reject simulations that lack actual social stakes?
Well, the discomfort you're describing is entirely valid, but you are actually misunderstanding the purpose of the simulation.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The lack of social stakes is exactly why it works. Think about the neurochemistry of speaking a foreign language with a native speaker for the very first time.
It's terrifying.
Right? The fear of judgment triggers a cortisol response. Your affective filter goes way up, your working memory bottlenecks, and you just freeze.
Yeah, you panic and forget words you absolutely know, like words you've known for years just vanish.
Exactly. By using the 3D Academy framework to have these simulated, mildly absurd conversations alone, you are intentionally practicing in a low-pressure environment.
Okay, so you're removing the panic.
Right. You are building the cognitive bridge between thought and speech without the paralyzing interference of social anxiety. You're training the brain to think directly in English syntax, bypassing that urge to translate from your native tongue first.
Okay, I see. So you are isolating the mechanical skill of speaking from the emotional weight of performing.
Yeah.
And because nobody is listening, you can leverage what 3D Academy calls the mistake to lesson log. When you inevitably crash and burn while trying to explain, like, Steve's jujitsu theories, you don't just feel embarrassed and stop.
No, you use the failure as a diagnostic tool.
Right. You isolate the point of failure. You ask yourself, did I lack the vocabulary or did the grammatical structure fall apart? And more importantly, you practice rescue phrases.
Right, the verbal lifeboats.
Yeah, phrases like, let me rephrase that, or what I'm trying to say is, or even a simple, hold on, I lost my train of thought.
And building muscle memory for those filler and recovery phrases in an empty room ensures that when you do freeze in a real-world conversation, your default reflex isn't just awkward silence.
Right, because silence is the worst.
Exactly. Your reflex becomes an English recovery phrase that buys your brain time to reboot.
You are practicing the art of the save.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So we've optimized the external environment with the action labels, and we've bypassed the social anxiety through solo shadowing. But what if the biological hardware of the brain itself is running at the wrong frequency for processing English syntax?
Now we are crossing from behavioral psychology straight into neurology. Specifically, that study from the Center for Brain Health at UT Dallas.
Yes, the auditory neuromodulation study published in Cerebral Cortex. They were testing the effects of binaural beats on language comprehension.
To clarify the mechanism here for a second, a binaural beat is actually an auditory illusion created in the brainstem.
How does that work?
Well, if you play a pure 400 hertz tone into your left ear and a 418 hertz tone into your right ear, your brain perceives the mathematical difference between the two.
So it generates a beat out of the difference.
Right. It generates an internal beat of 18 hertz. And as you listen, your own brain waves begin to sync up with that 18 hertz frequency.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because it is akin to overclocking a computer's processor, you are forcing the neurological hardware to run at a specific speed.
It's incredible.
The UT Dallas researchers had participants listen to complex English sentences. Some listened with an 18 hertz beta beat embedded in the background, others with a 40 hertz gamma beat, and others with just a neutral baseline tone.
And the distinction between the beta and gamma frequencies is paramount here. The listeners exposed to the 18 hertz beta beat demonstrated significantly higher accuracy and dramatically faster response times when comprehending complex syntax.
Wow.
But the 40 hertz gamma group showed no improvement whatsoever over the baseline.
So why the massive disparity? What is the 18 hertz beta state doing that the 40 hertz gamma state cannot?
It all comes down to a phenomenon called neural entrainment and how different brain states handle different cognitive loads. The beta frequency range, which is roughly 14 to 30 hertz, is the brain's signature state for active, analytical problem solving and focused attention.
Which is exactly what syntax is. I mean, it's basically a mathematical operation.
It really is.
You have to hold the subject of a sentence in your working memory while you analyze the verb tense, and then you have to wait for the object to arrive.
Precisely. Syntactic operations demand sequential processing and robust working memory. By entraining the brain to an 18 hertz beta state, the researchers essentially pre-activated the exact neural networks required for that heavy lifting.
So it just smoothed the whole process out.
Exactly. It lubricated the specific circuitry needed to untangle grammar. Gamma waves, on the other hand, which sit above 30 hertz, are associated with sudden bursts of insight or the binding of different senses, like, associating a smell with a visual memory.
So like a eureka moment, which is great for creative problem solving, sure, but absolutely useless for figuring out subject-verb agreement.
Exactly. Gamma doesn't help you sequence data. And this raises an important question posed by the lead investigator, Dr. Yoon Lee. If a completely non-invasive auditory illusion can demonstrably improve syntactic processing by temporarily altering the brain's hardware state, this is no longer just a study hack.
Right. What else could it do?
It suggests potential therapeutic applications for developmental language disorders.
Which is huge. It proves that our cognitive hardware is profoundly malleable. We just need to know which frequency to tune the dial to. But, if we can tune the waking brain with an 18 hertz beat, it forces us to look at what happens when the brain naturally shifts frequencies at night.
Oh, yes.
Can we actually utilize the sleeping brain for language acquisition?
Hypnopedia. Sleep learning. This is a topic that carries decades of scientific baggage and, frankly, a lot of internet mythology.
Oh, absolutely. You type "learn English" while sleeping into a search bar, and you are immediately inundated with these 8-hour videos promising that you can just absorb fluency through your pillow via osmosis.
Right, which is just not how the brain works.
The Confident Speaking podcast source took a hard look at the history of this, noting that since the 1950s, people have tried using sleep audio to learn Russian, pass exams, or even quit smoking.
And we must firmly debunk the myth right now. You cannot learn net new information while unconscious.
The podcast host, Julia, makes this very, very clear. If you play an audio track of a language you have never studied, your brain will not decode the grammar. You will not wake up knowing a new vocabulary word.
It's impossible.
The brain is not a sponge passively soaking up new environmental data during deep sleep.
Right. If it operated like a sponge, the sheer volume of ambient noise we sleep through would completely overload our neural circuits. However, the physiological reality of what the brain actually does accomplish during sleep is arguably far more powerful than the myth of hypnopedia.
Because the brain doesn't power down at all. It shifts into an active consolidation phase.
Yes. This is where we return to the concept of the night librarian. During your waking hours, the hippocampus acts as this temporary intake folder. It collects massive amounts of fragile, short-term data.
Right, just holding on to everything from the day.
Exactly. But during your sleep cycles, specifically during deep, slow-wave sleep and REM sleep, the night librarian takes over, and it reviews all those temporary files.
And it evaluates them based on two parameters: emotion and utility. Did this information carry an emotional charge, and is it a pattern that seems useful to survival or just daily function?
If the information was trivial, the neural connections are pruned, the memory is deleted. But if the brain flags it as important, the librarian transfers that data from the fragile hippocampus to the neocortex. It locks it into stable, long-term memory. This is memory consolidation.
So how does piping an audio track into our ears at night actually influence that librarian? Because the Confident Speaking podcast highlighted a pivotal Swiss study to explain this.
It did, yes.
Researchers played foreign vocabulary words to sleeping participants, and the next morning, those participants recalled the words significantly better than a control group.
But the critical caveat here, the reason this isn't magic, is that they only remembered the words if they had already actively studied them while awake.
Ah, right. It is a process known as targeted memory reactivation. You are providing a very subtle auditory cue to the sleeping brain.
Right. It's
like hitting save on a document you were already typing. If you didn't type the document during the day, hitting save at night does literally nothing.
that analogy is flawless.
Yeah.
That is exactly it. The brain hears the word playing softly in the background. It recognizes the pattern from the daytime study session, and the night librarian says, oh, this data point has reappeared. It must be highly relevant. Prioritize this for long-term storage.
Wow.
You're strengthening an existing neural pathway. You're not building a new one from scratch.
So if a listener wants to transform their bedroom into a targeted memory reactivation lab tonight, we need to map out the exact routine, because doing this haphazardly will just ruin your sleep architecture, which obviously defeats the entire purpose.
Completely. You don't want to mess with your sleep quality.
Based on the podcast's synthesis, the optimal routine breaks down into 4 sequential steps. The first step obviously happens at noon. You have to actively study the material.
Yes. Active daytime engagement is completely non-negotiable. Step 2 occurs about 30 minutes before you go to bed. You conduct a gentle, low-friction review of that exact same material.
And gentle is the operative word here. You aren't doing high-intensity grammar drills or stressing over flashcards. You are just maybe skimming the transcript of that bizarre Steve and Lisa conversation from Zen English. You're just priming the pump.
Exactly. Step 3 is the actual mechanical implementation. As you physically get into bed, you play that specific audio track on a very low volume. But crucially, you must use a sleep timer set for 30 to 60 minutes.
Right, you don't want it running all night long.
No, definitely not.
Because if the audio continues into your deep, slow-wave sleep, it can actually pull you out of restorative rest and leave you cognitively impaired the next day.
Which is the opposite of what we want.
Right. And step 4 has to be about the curation of the audio itself. You cannot use jarring, high-stakes content.
Absolutely not. The sleeping brain requires acoustic tranquility.
If you try to fall asleep to like a fast-paced political debate or an action movie in English, the night librarian drops the files and triggers a full alert response. The audio must be rhythmic, familiar, and emotionally flat.
It has to be Steve talking in a monotone voice about his broken down car.
Exactly. You are aiming for passive familiarity.
Passive familiarity is the perfect way to phrase it.
So what does this all mean when we pull it together? We have dissected digital environments, behavioral microhabits, neuromuscular shadowing, neural entrainment, and the sleep consolidation process.
A lot of ground to cover.
It is. But if we synthesize this entire deep dive into a cohesive daily blueprint for the listener, it reveals a remarkably elegant system. You wake up and your smartphone is already demanding you interact with English procedural memory.
Right.
You use your morning coffee as an anchor habit to trigger an 8-minute solo shadowing session, overriding your social anxiety with rescue phrases. While you work in the afternoon, you put on headphones with an 18 hertz beta binaural beat to overclock your brain's syntactic processing.
Love that.
And finally, you end your day by doing a gentle 20-minute review, falling asleep to the exact audio you studied, and letting the night librarian lock the pathways into your neocortex.
It is a completely self-contained ecosystem. And the ultimate takeaway here is really a redefinition of fluency itself. Fluency is not a magical endpoint that you unlock after 1,000 hours of suffering. Fluency is merely a byproduct.
A byproduct of tiny, frictionless routines.
Exactly. By reshaping your external environment, removing the emotional friction of social output, and chemically optimizing your waking and sleeping cognitive states, you stop fighting your biology. The objective of all these interwoven techniques isn't just to memorize an English dictionary. It is to condition your central nervous system to view the English language as safe, predictable, and entirely normal.
It is about engineering familiarity. And, that leaves us with a rather profound and maybe slightly unsettling thought to end on.
Oh, yeah.
We have established today that your sleeping brain meticulously curates your long-term memory based on the emotion, repetition, and utility of what you experience during the day.
Right, the night librarian.
Exactly. It actively filters your daily inputs to construct your baseline reality. So if that is the precise mechanism we use to deliberately wire a new language into our neurons, what else are we accidentally wiring into our subconscious every single night based on the doom scrolling, the media, and the chaotic conversations we expose our brains to right before we close our eyes?